All right, everyone. Now we have to talk about the Vander Plaats primary. Of course, Bob Vander Plaats, big time political donor, very heavily evangelically adherent. He has disproportionate power in the state of Iowa. And in all cases, by the way, in the last few elections, he has endorsed the person who won Iowa, only for them to go on and lose in the primaries. Of course, he endorsed Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz won Iowa, etc., etc. He is expected, I don't think he has endorsed yet, but I think he's expected to endorse Ron DeSantis, which would give him a second place victory there, certainly. I think it would definitely move that metric by a good total. In the end, though, I think that Donald Trump is effectively the death knell of the old guard Republican movement. The old guard Republican movement was more evangelical. Trump has disproportionately a lot of support among evangelicals, despite clearly not being particularly religious. He can hold up the Bible and occasionally appear in church and stuff like that. I see through it. I saw through it in 2016. I had liberals and some non-neocon voters. They're like, well, Donald Trump, he's talking about Jesus and stuff. Sticks, isn't that against your religion? And I'm like, well, my views changed over time. You realize I'm not a member of a satanic movement or anything like that. I'm an occultist. My originally anti-Christian views have mellowed out. I'm not anti-Christian. I'm anti-churchianity, you could say. But then again, I'm against all organized religion, including the pagan ones, for example. But the old guard GOP was basically the party of Jesus, and Jesus is going to be my VP. I criticized Santorum about some of his statements. People like fucking even up through Ted Cruz. I've criticized candidates in this cycle too. Nikki Haley, of course, being Hindu, maybe she's celebrating Diwali or something like that. It's like, okay, you've got your faith, and keep it private. You're going to be a public official. Keep it to yourself. Ronald Reagan, a great example. The Gipper himself was not particularly religious. He can lie all day to people. He had a really good aside, though. He said, well, I don't go to church very often. I believe in Jesus, and I love Jesus. He's my Lord and Savior and King and all this stuff. But I can't go to church because somebody might attack the church. And so I have little private ceremonies and stuff. He danced around the legacy media when they tried to pin him on that one. That was when the Gipper was at his best. Trump is not particularly religious, but he has disproportionate evangelical support. In other cases, this would have given, presumptively again, Ron DeSantis the victory in Iowa. The problem is that in those particular races, they were non-incumbent primaries. This is effectively an incumbent being primaried. Donald Trump has already been the President of the United States. I would point out further, none of these other candidates were ever polling anywhere near what Donald Trump is polling nationally. I think in the end, this swings the metric in, again, presumptively, DeSantis' favor. But I don't think he wins Iowa. I think Trump wins Iowa. It'll be closer than most people expect. Some people are like, oh, well, Trump is 30 points ahead in Iowa. He shouldn't even bother campaigning there. He should just go national already. No. It's going to be closer than that. It was going to, even if Vander Plaats came out today and endorsed Trump, it would still be closer. Because Iowa has a problem with frontrunners. This is traditionally the case. Again, Donald Trump was the front runner in 2016 when he lost Iowa. He was ahead in much of the polling, but he managed to lose. But he was only ahead by a scant single-digit margin. He wasn't ahead by 30 points there. He certainly wasn't ahead by 45 points nationally. And he hadn't had any presidential experience. None of the metrics in this particular race, for all of the pundits out there saying, well, Vander Plaats is going to swing Iowa. So basically, DeSantis wins Iowa, Trump goes on to win in the primary at large, but it becomes more messy, and people think Trump can be defeated. Dude, even if DeSantis won Iowa, and I don't think that he's going to do that, it wouldn't stop Trump. It would just give a false hope and consolidate the lower end of the field. Of course, there's no guarantee, for example, that like if Nikki Haley dropped out, she wouldn't endorse Donald. There is no guarantee that you coalesce the field. That the whole goal of the DeSantis camp and the Haley camp is everyone else but their person drops out and magically endorses them. But that's not even a given. Ramaswamy could drop out tomorrow and endorse Trump. It would put him over the edge. He would be above 60 nationally because of that. by gobbling up that support. I think that that's probably what we're going to end up seeing before the Super Tuesday anyway. Vander Plaats has disproportionate capabilities with the evangelical electorate. They are more powerful in Iowa than they would be in a place like New Hampshire or Nevada or New York or something like that. Iowa is, you know, fairly religious comparatively. But a lot of those people who are evangelical voters have already decided to vote for Trump. I don't think that Vander Plaats' primary, arguably Ron DeSantis did win the night. He did have the most coherent quips of the night compared to his rivals. And Christie, I guess, didn't show up. He didn't want Thanksgiving dinner? He didn't show up for the fucking food? That's a new one. The other big problem, is that the RNC already warned the candidates that anyone that went to this effectively kinda sorta debate, because it wasn't sanctioned by the RNC, would no longer be able to participate in future debates. Because all of the candidates with any form of viability at all decided to show up anyway, we now see whether the RNC are a bunch of weak, pathetic cucks, or if they stick to their guns, and the debate is basically Chris Christie versus Burgum, I suppose. He, I guess, would qualify for the stage. In fact, if nobody qualifies, there wouldn't be any further GOP debates. They may have torpedoed their own ability to stand on stage at an RNC event through the primaries. We're not sure exactly where... Again, the RNC explicitly warned them. Anyone that shows up for this unsanctioned event will disqualify themselves to show up at future debates. But the whole field showed up to talk to Vander Plaats, because they're all gunning for Iowa. They all desperately want his endorsement because they're all desperately convinced that somehow he's going to swing a shit ton of MAGA voters simply because they happen to believe in Jesus Christ. I just don't think that the evangelical control over elements of the GOP is as strong as it was. Certainly back in 2016, evangelical voters were a stronger bloc. You go back a decade further than that, that basically is the control of the GOP is the evangelical voting bloc. They control the Bible Belt, they control the Midwest, they control large swaths of the further western states, they have disproportionate control in certain areas in the Rust Belt. Basically, other than the far west coast in New England and places that the GOP wasn't even competitive in, it's evangelicaldom. That's why Santorum, despite the fact that he's completely nuts, he managed to actually have a fairly good run. In the end, those highly religious candidates typically lose. This may be the first time in a long time, because of the technical incumbency and the enormous polling gap, that the non-religious candidate, which is Trump, by the way, ends up winning Iowa and then goes on to run the field. That's what I believe is most likely to happen. I don't think that Vander Plaats has the same clout that he did 20 years ago. Fundraising ability, absolutely. Philanthropic donor capabilities, yeah, the dude's loaded as hell. By the way, so is Trump. Under normal circumstances, this is not the GOP of your parents. It's different now. It's not 1985 anymore. The religious voting bloc is much smaller as a proportion to the population. The religious voting bloc that is really, really religious is also smaller. I think that's probably shrunk more. Just because you abandon hardline, fire and brimstone, Jesus must be president Christianity doesn't mean you're non-Christian. It's just that Christians overall have liberalized more. I mean, look at the Catholic voting bloc for an example. Yes, Protestant v. Catholic, are they actually Christians or are they heathens? Argument will consume the comment section for me even, by the way, deciding to mention that. I believe Trump wins Iowa. It will be closer than the polling suggests. It'll probably be by a low double-digit margin, not by 25, 30 points. I expect a double-digit swing, or nearly so. It's going to be a significant swing. This alone will reinvigorate the lower campaign that happens to come in second. Probably Ron DeSantis again, presumptively. Could be Haley, you never know. Which would be funny because she's not a Christian. Endorsed by the evangelical leader. And I don't think, is Ramaswamy Christian? I don't think he is either. Well, then I guess we know who's probably getting endorsed. But then again, they could come out and say, no, I like DeSantis, but I don't think he's going to get it. So, whatever. I'll not endorse anyone. Could choose at the 11th hour to do that as well. That's about all. Peace out.